Hello, I'm Matthew McIver, Artistic Director of the Iowa Stage Theater Company. This is a fun conversation in our Iowa Stages Conversation series with Tiffany Johnson, the producing artistic director of Pyramid Theater Company. Pyramid is a wonderful company here in Des Moines. I was pleased to be part of the founding of that organization as an original board member and have been a fan of Tiffany's since before there was a Pyramid. Her work as an actor in Stage West's productions and also in the incredible production of Fences that Kim Matt Martin directed at the Des Moines Social Club, as well as her work as a director and the artistic director of Pyramid, has been incredibly exciting to watch over the years. She's a good friend, and I hope you enjoy as much as we did this conversation with Tiffany Johnson, producing artistic director of Pyramid Theater Company. Here we go. So I'm here today with Tiffany Johnson, the artistic director, producing artistic director. What do they call you these days?
Producing artistic director. Yes.
I've got a board member who calls me Lord High Everything Else, so that's kind of
that works too.
Our organizations are similarly staffed. The producing artistic director with the Pyramid Theater Company. So, Tiffany, thank you so much. Just for folks who maybe could use a little brush up, would you talk a little bit about Pyramid's mission, your involvement, and kind of how you came to where you are?
Okay. Well, Pyramid Theater Company was born in August of 2015. It was after a couple of very successful co-productions with the Des Moines Social Club, which with you were involved in, A Soldier's Play. After that show, we decided that we saw the relevance of continuing to tell these type of stories and to keep them around and more accessible to people in our community. So we decided to start our own company that focused on that type of work. Pyramid's mission is to provide a gateway to the arts for the Des Moines community by illuminating the presence of Black voices in the theater canon, and then to provide a means for their artistic expression. We commit ourselves to the tenet of Sankofa, which is from the Akan language of Ghana, meaning to return and retrieve. So we believe in going back to retrieve stories and history and culture and lessons from the past in order to serve the present and hopefully the future.
That's awesome.
As crazy as the future is looking right now.
We're all going to figure that out. It's something we're going to have to do together. And your involvement, you were one of the founders of Pyramid Theater, but you came into your current role when?
So I just took over as producing artistic director in March of 2019. So it has been just over a year that I've had the role of producing artistic director. And Pyramid was founded with 6 other founding members who are all affiliated still with Pyramid in some type of way, however, have various careers that have taken them in various directions. And so they've left it in my hands because I am not only probably the most native of Iowa, probably the one that'll be sticking around. So they trained me, believe me, crash course training.
Throw you in the deep end, see if you can swim kind of training.
Well, there you have it.
That's how theater works, right? You want to do this? Go do it. Let's see how it works out.
No, they embrace me and they're all around me all the time, always helping me make good informed decisions. So they keep me pretty well covered.
And you guys have a great strategy in terms of your season, sort of like the Des Moines Metro Opera, which is a 45-year-old institution here that has sort of owned the summers in terms of a lot of local performing arts. You guys saw that space as being really available. Des Moines got a really rich, Central Iowa, I should say, has a really rich theater scene with a lot of different companies. And you guys saw that a lot of them were running on that sort of classic sort of school year calendar, and said, let's make the summer ours and launch there. And you've done wonderful things with that sort of in the summer. Tell us a little bit about the upcoming season for Pyramid, the plans, and we're going to talk about how this may or may not have shifted. But first, lay out for us what the summer of 2020 is looking like for Pyramid in the initial paper.
Okay. Well, the selections that we have made for the summer seasons, our first show would be Having Our Say, which is a story about the Delaney sisters in their first 100 years. They were centenarians. They were civil rights activists. And the story takes you all the way from the end of slavery through Jim Crow South, the Great Migration, Harlem Renaissance, all the way up to about the 1990s. It's a wonderful showcase of history laid out over a century of time behind the eyeballs of people who got to see all of that century of history with their own eyes, which is a very unique perspective, I think, because they crossed over a large period of the Black experience from where it was very difficult to where there were some different liberties towards the end of their life that they had been able to view themselves, the drastic contrast that happened over the course of that 100 years. The playwright is Emily Mann. She's an American playwright out of Boston. It was written in 1993, and that was going to be our classic work for the year. I was so excited about that and hoping, permitting what's going on with the world that we have going on today, that we'll be able to offer that to our audiences this summer. The second show that we were going to do for our August slot is Fairview by Jackie Sibley's Drury. Very controversial piece of work written in 2018. I believe it was a co-commission by Berkeley and Soho Rep and ran in Soho Rep in June of 2018. It actually won Pulitzer Prize for Best Play for 2019. So pretty exciting piece of work there too. And I'm extremely excited to direct that show.
tremendous amount of buzz around that play. Huge, a lot of press, a lot of conversation. Like you say, it's a really it's an exciting piece of work, and I was thrilled to see you guys were bringing it to town and giving Central Iowa audiences a chance to see some of the hottest new writing that's out there, which is incredibly exciting. That was scheduled for August, and Having Our Say, the Delaney sisters. Well, that was a very popular book several years back.
Yes, and it was actually written by the Delaney sisters. Emily Mann wrote an adaptation of the book into the play format. So it was literally biographical in its nature, like it was talking about real stuff, not talked about stuff or written about stuff. It was literally lived stuff. I had some very exciting ideas with which doing a two-hander, a one-hander, two-hander, those are a little bit more complicated to keep your audiences invested. You have to really dive into the storytelling there and really use the other aspects of theater, lights and sound, and to act as characters on the stage. So it's fun. It's a fun interaction as far as a production team aspect goes too, because it really gives us the opportunity to work more in tandem. Because we're looking at those aspects of the production as actual living, breathing characters on the stage. So not just an enhancement, but just a role.
Yeah. And you, of course, did last season, it was last season you did the one-hander with August Wilson's How I Learned What I Learned.
With Aaron, yep.
That you did with Aaron. And then you guys took to Riverside Theater in Iowa City. We talked with Adam Knight just a few weeks ago.
Yep, it was actually a co-production that we did with Riverside. We had a wonderful time down there with Adam and all of the crew. I hope that we will be able to visit them soon again after this whole pandemic thing releases and we see where it's at. I want to go. They're doing some pretty great theater down there, so I want to get down there a little more often and see some shows. So maybe we can carpool. Catch some.
I would love to do a road trip. I was talking to him about what their Shakespeare is going to look like for the summer, and depending on how all that shakes out, like you, me, and minivan going to Iowa City. I love this idea.
Yeah, and actually the Shakespeare aspect is something that Riverside and Iowa Stage have in common. So that would be some interesting stuff too.
We were talking about that, about their sort of history with the festival there. So
yeah,
give us kind of where you were in your planning, like around mid-March when all this starts going a little bit sideways. Like what were you guys? Where were you in your process? What were you engaged in? What was happening for you guys at that point in mid-March when everything starts to get a little pear-shaped?
So one of the things that has happened a lot over the last year is that in our off season, we have started to involve ourselves and invest ourselves a lot more in the community, doing a lot of work with other community organizations such as Boys and Girls Club, or we've worked with Homes of Oak Ridge and some of the youth over there, doing some drama and acting along with Emmett Phillips, who you know and I love.
And I would just say that since you mentioned Emmett, he's in our reading of Mahala Island that we're doing sort of virtually Zoom kind of thing, and which hopefully, if all goes according to plan, will actually have been posted by the time folks get a chance to listen to this conversation. So they should take a look for that. And for Emmett, he's a wonderful actor.
Yeah, please watch it because he's just amazing all the way around. Not only just his community involvement, his investment to youth, he's just wonderful. But anyway,
and that's Andrea Wilson's play too, who you just directed in
Wild Widow Poker.
Yeah.
Yep, at Grandview. Yep. So I am going to tune in for the reading because I can't wait to hear something else that Dr. Wilson has done. Mm-hmm. But yeah, going back to what we were, so we were kind of at a place where we were kind of slowing down out of Wild Widow. That was in February. We were kind of getting to the place where we were going to move into pre-production for our season. By the grace of God, we hadn't actually moved into full production aspect to where we were really investing a lot in the actual building of the first show. We were literally going into auditions, and that was kind of where we were at and getting ready to start the rehearsal process. I think the most hurtful thing about it right now is that Pyramid itself, we wait all year long to get ready to gear up for our summer season, and there's quite a bit of excitement that starts to build up towards the presentation of our season, and it kind of just put us at a stopping point, where an unfamiliar stopping point at that, to where it was like, okay, what does this really look like, and what is this going to look like long term? And then when we start looking at the national ramifications that are occurring around it, then you start to have larger questions and larger concerns. But we weren't luckily extremely financially invested in our show at that point.
You have a lot of money out the door yet in those productions.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and you know, in the nature of nonprofit, every single dollar counts. And so we were blessed in that
regard. Margins and a large cash reserve as a theater company?
What was that?
You as a theater company are not sitting on fat margins and a large cash reserve?
Oh,
That's
well.
Weird. That's weird.
Is it? We need to check some stuff then.
You're absolutely right. You're tracking every dollar.
Yeah.
And trying to make
community theater. You know, that's the story for community theater at large. We depend on the people that we actually serve to help us help us stay going. And what becomes important is to continue to make sure that our audiences know how important this is for our communities and to our communities. Because sometimes I think, especially in our community, or in the Black community, it's a cultivated thing more so than not, which is why I'm glad that we decided as a core team to do a summer season, because we realized that there would be a certain amount of community work and cultivating that we would have to do within our communities in order to show them the value, especially when we live in marginalized communities and have issues, economic issues sometimes, that don't allow us to make room for something like ticket purchases to plays when we haven't first realized the value of what you would get out of that investment. So just us being able to be visible in the community and cultivate that palette for theater, not only good for Black theater and Pyramid, it's good for theater at large in our state, as I think that it really gives us the opportunity to have conversations that we couldn't have in other spaces.
Yeah, I think that's really true.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about, some of the talkbacks and things like that. And I know you guys have done lots of different kinds of engagement activities. But from our perspective, we've moved to doing more and more of that kind of engagement, more and more of trying to not just present a show and have people clap, but hear back from them. I mean, I believe very strongly, and I think it's in line with what I know of your work, that theater is a conversation, not a lecture. That it is not a one-way transmission. It's a circuit between the audience and the artists, and that's what makes it such a vibrant and alive form of theater, a form of performing arts. What has you weren't that deep into it. You were about to have auditions, and I'm assuming that you had to tap the brakes and not have those, or did you have them?
In a way, we did. With having our say, it's a two-handed cast, so it wasn't going to take a large casting to do that. We didn't, because of social distancing and the recommendations from the state, host a normal, conventional, in-person audition process. We added a component to that to our website to let people sign up. And then we conducted just one-on-one auditions using virtual resources.
Like this kind of thing.
Yep.
I'm reading scene.
Which I think from a directorial standpoint is a little bit more tricky to me, because as a director, I like to get a feel of the individual that I'm working with in a human way, because that's the interaction that I expect them to have with the audience. So it kind of puts that screen between us that makes it difficult to break the ice sometimes with people that aren't familiar with you or don't know you. It becomes a little bit more, I think, polarizing in a way, colder.
A little colder. It's such a weird thing, because like you and I, we talk on the phone, we know each other. We're not able to go out and have a drink together right now, but we can do this, or we can chat on the phone. And so there's a rapport that I have with you that I wouldn't have with someone that I didn't have that background or relationship with, right? So do you find I find it's a little weird, the whole trying to rehearse or do theater in a technological environment where there might be a lag, or there might be so much of that rhythm and give and take that's so important in theater is affected, at least, by this medium, that it's a different feel. And it's different even than, like, if you think about film or TV. Yeah, they're using a camera, but they're in the room with the people they're filming with. They're listening, by and large. I mean, unless you're doing something like The Avengers, where it's all green screen and who knows where anybody is. But I haven't worked on that kind of a budget yet, so
we're getting there.
We'll get there. Yes. I'm only off by about 7 zeros. But you're there with the people that you're creating with, and to be separated by this. What do you think about? So we're doing this. So we're doing these kinds of conversations, Iowa stages, because this is something that I thought made sense. I can have a conversation with you. I can have a conversation with Adam. We can have a dialogue and interchange, and it's not going to be, if there's a little bit of a lag, it doesn't make that much difference. We can exchange ideas. We're not trying to do highly dense text. We're trying to talk.
Right.
So this is something that made sense to us. Iowa Stage has our Scriptease play reading series that was started under Stage West, has been going on for years. And so doing a reading on Zoom didn't feel that different to me from doing a reading at music stands in a room. You don't have the audience response right there, but you do have you do have the, sorry, this is things going off. I apologize. I need to get my girl to bring me a gin and tonic. When I say my girl, I mean,
I'm sitting here enjoying my little local.
Oh, right? I didn't get my act together before I sat down. On.
To the rescue.
What is, as we see people trying to do things, so we like, okay, well, we can do this kind of conversation. That's something Iowa State can do. We can try to do a script tease. That's something that is closer in experience. You're not going to lose as much of the live experience. Earlier today, my daughters and I were watching Twelfth Night from the National Theatre of Great Britain. Well, they've been filming their productions in their big houses for their NT Live, movie theater broadcasts for years. They've got tremendous experience. It's a professionally shot production. It looks fantastic. The acting is great. The editing is terrific. It's all done really well. And it's like kind of watching a movie, but you hear the audience response. That's really cool. I don't have that. I don't have 9 camera setups, film material that I can share out. I'm not going to have that kind of quality, so that doesn't make sense for me to try and do. What have you guys been thinking about all of this? About folks trying to do some sort of virtual or digital or online theater, some sort of engagement or some sort of performance through something like what we're doing now, or some other platform?
Well, and we have been in the lab just throwing that around, and also being very cognizant and just kind of watching what is already happening. It's a unique period of time in the sense that one of the arguments that we've always had in the theater sector in my demographic, usually, which is kind of the tie-in from the older and into the younger, is that the structure of theater has been so kind of structured in a way that didn't allow a lot of room for innovation. It was fit into the box that is the structure of theater, and it was something that was kind of stifling to us, that were kind of interested in breaking outside of those models a little and breaking outside of those boxes. And I truly believe that in order to stay relevant, you have to learn how to adapt and transcend and move through time. My opinion personally of the digital feeling that I get when I'm watching something that is supposed to be theater on a digital platform is that I'm finding it very difficult for the dialogue and the emotion and the human exchange to land on me. Part of it is just because of the inability to focus. When you go into a theater setting, you are there for that reason. So you allow yourself to be taken into the story in a way that you wouldn't outside of that setting. You are also not inundated by distraction. If we're watching something on screen here, as far as the theatrical presentation, and the phone rings, just like in the theater, that is a freaking no-no. You're like, you don't want a phone to ring, right, in that type of a thing. So it kind of changes the way we're viewing theater, which is difficult for me because I am a strong advocate for theater being one of those few vehicles that we have left to offer those human exchanges that I find to be so important. And that made me fall in love with theater and want to make a career out of it. But I also do know that we need to look towards a future that is more reliant upon technology than anything else. And we have to look at innovating what theater looks like from what it's looked like before. And I'm not certain, and with the conversations that I have in our core team conversations, we're all not certain what exactly that looks like. And I think the removal of it is more penetratable to us than it is the younger demographic, because they weren't fully attached to theater unless they had been brought up in that industry or had parents that were heavily involved in theater. They weren't truly affected by it in that way. And they live in a world of technology and have for mostly their whole lives, to where I think that their almost preference might be technology sometimes, which is where we lose that younger audience. So I'm trying to figure out how you reintroduce yourself in a time like this on a digital platform that can still provide the same impact that we can when you're in the space.
Well, I don't know that you can, honestly. I don't know that you can provide the same impact that you can when you're in a theater space. I mean, I agree 100% with your point. That's what makes theater unique and important and different is the impact of breathing the same air. Will Avery, the playwright of Heroes of the Fourth Turning that's just had all that buzz in New York, did a thing for Playwrights Horizons on Monday, I think it was, and he talked about the thing that he's come to understand is that plays are working really powerful when everyone's breathing the same. When the play, when your breathing is synced up with what's going on with the play, then all of a sudden there's that exchange that makes so much impact and power. And I think that's really hard to do through something like this. Video is different. It's a different art form. It's a different medium. Do you guys see? I mean, you guys are having those conversations, and you may not be at the point where you've made any decisions yet. But are there things you're sort of cooking up that would be online offerings or digital offerings from Pyramid?
We definitely have some, what we think are some very innovative ideas for what we could offer in a digital space that we think would be true to who we are as Pyramid.
Yeah.
The thing is structuring that in a way that rolls out with the aesthetic that we're known for and that we will not live without. And if we can accomplish that, then we would be willing to try to make something happen. And like I said, we've tried to really be very aware and very just slow to make any type of real big moves. I think sometimes when you get real jumpy because you think, oh, we have to do something and we have to do it now, it kind of might make you make some missteps or to do, so I think we kind of believe, and I think that I can say for the team, we kind of agree that slow and steady and watch what's happening in the world because it informs art.
Yeah.
And looking at that from that perspective, looking at something that we can still provide impact because it fits what the need of the time is because you paid attention to what the need of the time is. And so I am going to argue that I'm going to find a way to have some human impact through this screen.
Yeah. I think you can. I think there is. My point is not that you can't have an impact. My point is it's not the same. Which I feel like is what you're saying too.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. I think it is.
But I think we challenge ourselves to find our way to penetrate this too. There's got to be a sweet spot. There's got to be a place that we can tap in that says, I'm still going to remind you that you're human, even though you're in a space that doesn't feed that to you on a physical level. I'm going to mentally stimulate you to the point to you where you feel the emotional pull of that mental stimulation.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that. I think you've got to deal with what the tools of what it is, and use the thing as the thing itself, and not try to make it something that it's not. I totally agree with that. Well, I'm interested to hear. Is there anything you can kind of preview, highlight? You want to hint that a little bit about what you might be doing? Are you guys still?
I don't think we're ready to do that much yet.
Okay.
Because, just because I just like to make sure that our I's are dotted and T's are crossed before I get to over promising and under delivering. So we're not quite at the stage of saying we're making some haphazard or dropping some hint because We
All
still
right.
don't fully know what it looks like, but we're cooking stuff. Just know that. And Pyramid doesn't often put anything on the table that doesn't taste
No,
good.
not at all. No, it's a home cooked banquet. Right here, it comes to town. It's a full spread, and you're gonna go back for seconds for sure. I'm just sound like John Busby. Um, but so we got to sort of the point of where you guys have now had auditions, and have you cast the show?
Um, we have not. We are probably going to hold another round of auditions also, because I think the doing everything in digital format kind of took people aback when it came to the process of auditioning.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of slowed down not only our process, because we were trying to get used to it and we had some chinks in the chain when it came to just how the flow of that worked. And also just people learning how to do auditions in this way, when oftentimes we work with artists that haven't ever even been on stage before. So getting them to go through an audition in this way where I can't do my normal coaching and getting people comfortable and that type of thing. It just is a little slower. So we wanted, I think, to do a second round, potentially.
Inherently a little uncomfortable with this if you're not somebody who spends a lot of time in video conferences. This is a weird way to be. This is a weird thing.
It is. It really is. And I thought though, but if we did a second round potentially, that it would give people a chance, because everybody's kind of having to log into this method of meeting. It will give them a chance to have worked with some of those systems and be a little bit more comfortable. So I think that might be in our best interest to do so. But what was that?
I was just going to say, so that's kind of where you are in the process. Are you at the point, given you and I are talking now on the last day of April, having our say is scheduled to go into the Stoner Theater in June. So we're at a point where, for that kind of date, and for folks who may not be as familiar with how a theater calendar goes, this is where we're really ramping up production meetings, we're casting, we're starting to do rehearsals, we're really starting to meet. We're working multiple nights a week in rehearsal usually, because people have day jobs, so we're rehearsing in the evening and all of this. Obviously, you and I are talking like this because we have to. Otherwise, I put my iPhone on the table at 8 a.m. and we're doing it there. What impact has this had on your planning for having our say? Do you guys know what that looks like yet? Are you able to make that decision? Or from our perspective, we were in rehearsal. We were a week away from loading into the theater for the Cake when we decided we had to reschedule that show, then suspended everything else for the rest of the season, and we have moved the Cake and Sweat into next year. So they're going to be in 2021 now. Next season, reshuffling that whole day. And I can say that those announcements have gone out. Ticket holders have been informed that this is happening. So that had a huge impact on us. We were ahead of you in the calendar with March show and a May show. Have you been able to make any decisions given sort of the uncertainty around everything?
Well, with having our say, we definitely, based off of the auditions that we were able to do digitally, we have potential cast. Not that we're able to announce right now because there's nothing that we're not at that point. But so they have material with which to study and to be working on, just in case preliminarily. We were scheduled to start rehearsal this week right now. So right now we would just be a couple days in to table work. But the larger question would be the usage of the space, not knowing what the state's gonna do. One of our top priorities is to make sure that we're looking out for the safety and well-being of our supporters and our patrons and our potential castings. So those things all play really heavily, and then that goes back to the polarization of trying to rehearse things digitally and prepare for things in real space too, which creates some problematic things too. So
And we
the
should say
biggest
so that folks,
question is,
right, just going to say we should say so that folks know you guys perform in the Stony Theater for Des Moines Performing Arts. If folks are unaware of that, so you are in that wonderful space, in that facility.
yeah,
We are as well. We're proud to be based with y'all. And so we are housed within a larger institution that's making its own decisions and its own policy. Have you had conversations with them about what June looks like?
I mean, it's still like on the ticker type thing. It seems like, you know, every day we're hearing that, oh, we'll start to open up more and whatever, and then there's resistance, and then, you know, the community at large seems very uncomfortable with it, and more than a structural business in the city and state, we're a community based business. So we're going to err on the side and be listening to the rhythm of the people that we're trying to serve. So even if we open government wise, we're going to be listening to our patrons and our supporters and the people that we want to stay healthy in our communities. There are some known disparages that exist with this COVID-19 thing amongst the Black community. They've been talking about percentages being higher with fatalities and illness. For whatever reason, which is frustrating in itself, but as a Black theater company, one of our priorities will always be to listen to the rhythm of our people. And so we will do and move along with their rhythm. I am remiss to think that even with the opening of the government, say they open next week, next month fully by a stretch of whatever, I believe that our supporters in our community are going to be a little bit more reluctant to just start mainstream going to theaters, going to large places with large amounts of patrons. Amongst my community, they are frustrated that barbershops and beauty salons are kind of being held captive, but the farmers market is being opened. And we're just really trying to find out what the logistic of that really kind of looks like, because a large percentage of the population in our communities have providers, mothers and fathers that work in that industry, in the hair and beauty salon industry. And so it's created an issue economically, in our community as well. So we're a very comprehensive theater company, and although our primary focus is theater, our larger purpose is the people that we are trying to produce theater for. So that to me is again why I think theater is so important, because it gives us the opportunity to speak to those type of things, to those disparages, to those things that have happened historically that maybe we're not aware of, not only the tribulation aspect of it, but the triumph aspect of it, and empowering our communities and our people towards their greatness and their strength. We were talking a little bit off the grid earlier about how Black people feel about theater, and where it's derivative from, as opposed to American theater at large. It wasn't. If you look, theater in Black people's culture was alive all the way from the slave trade, where they would often use blackface and improv and folk tales on plantation shows where they utilize Black people for dimwits or clowns or something of, for lack of better terminology, I'm trying to use good words to describe bad things.
Awful.
But like that's around the 17th and 18th century, and it was oppressive in its nature. And then
blackface
there's,
was into the 20th century. I mean, you got.
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it worked its way through, and I mean, all the way down to the first wave of the Great Migration. About 1.6 million people migrated north, and slowly but surely, art and the presentation of it began to evolve and change. But it was derivative of oppression and the relief of oppression and revolution and liberation. And I think sometimes we're a bit territorial with it because of those reasons. And a lot of times in our communities, we've had arguments of like Black theater versus other theater, or what is, that type of thing. And those are, I think, some of the things that create a more, I realized last season, and have worked to find a counseling situation to coincide with my season now, because I realized that doing this work, that it pulls up a lot of those feelings of oppression. It pulls up a lot of the feelings that may have existed in our ancestors and in our grandfathers and our mothers and fathers, that bring us to certain realizations when we're portraying these roles that are painful, almost PTSD in its nature. And I really realized that I need to provide an outlet for my actors, that although they are doing their due diligence to tell this story to an audience, and they know the importance of conveying this story, that I'm also paying attention to their mental health and with the conveyance of it, because I myself am an actor, and I have had those feelings conjured up within myself with my portrayal of said roles or certain roles. And that was one of the discoveries that I made, that I think that might sometimes be different, because there's controversy in American theater, but how oppressive or how oppressive of a place does it come from, which pulls up a different set of emotional situations that I don't know that everybody has a universal understanding of what that actually feels like.
I would guarantee that they don't. I mean, because we're not. There was a great phrase somebody was applying it to the pandemic, but I think it actually kind of works as a metaphor for racism in America. It's like, we're not all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm, right? And I feel like, my experience. I mean, as a cisgender white Christian man in America, I mean, I take every box of privilege except for the fact that I'm left-handed. And so I'm going to have a very different experience in this country than you're going to have, or that Wayfaring is going to have, or other artists of color, two backgrounds. Like, we're not going to have the same experience in this country. And that's one of the reasons I think that voices like Pyramid are so important, is that the history of African American theater and the voices that have come up through that history that are, arguably, you can't actually argue the greatest dramatic achievement in American playwriting is August Wilson's Century Cycle. Full stop. Ain't nothing close. It is the single greatest achievement in dramatic literature that anybody in this country put out. And it very specifically talks about an experience that the majority of my audience at Iowa State Theater Company would not have had. But can wonderfully access through something like Fences, which is one of the first. I think of it as the sort of the 0.1 of Pyramid Theater Company, but because there wasn't officially a pyramid yet, but the production that you were in, and Aaron was in, and Kenneth directed, and Jeray was here for it. She was the dramaturg in that one. Jeray Brown-Palmer was the artistic director of the first season of Pyramid. Like that production.
Alexis was in there, stage managing.
Alexis was in there. Yep.
Yeah. we were becoming a family.
Yeah. And then that was the nucleus that then went on to produce Soldier's Play again.
That you directed.
Which I directed, and was very fortunate to have a wonderful assistant director named Tiffany Johnson.
We don't know who that hot girl is. Woo, she was cute though.
But those voices and those stories have been there, but they haven't been highlighted in the way that y'all have been so good about bringing them forward, and so thoughtful and consistent. And it's been extraordinary to watch this company engage and grow and do what it does.
And then even in addition to offering those Black stories, providing opportunities for artists of color here that just wasn't there before. Because the stories weren't being told, there was not the casting ability, you know. I think that's one of the biggest things that Pyramid's going to be able to help address.
I'll tell you a story about that. The first time I sat down with Kim Matt to talk about fences, that was actually Kim Matt, Scott Sipper, and myself sit down and talk about August Wilson. And what I said to Kim Matt point blank was, I don't know the actors to cast everybody in that show. Like I couldn't, I at that point I hadn't been in town as long as I have now, but I could look at some place and I could go, okay, I can cast these roles and I need to find this person, but I can probably find them. But I looked at Fences, these powerhouse, towering Titanic roles. Like you can't have people in these roles who there are sometimes when, so for instance, Soldier Play, we had a really blended cast. We had some really experienced people in that show, and we had some people who were on stage for literally the first time in their lives. And that worked because you could work, the right Fences. It's a smaller cast, and everybody's got to knock it out the park. Like every single person has to be amazing in that show. And I didn't know enough people at that point. And I said, can we do it? And he said, we can, absolutely. And he did. He cast it, and they did it, and it was extraordinary production. And that has been part of the thing here that is providing opportunities for people who are already fantastic actors like yourself, like an Aaron Smith, but also people who are talented and skilled and relatively newer. I think about it. We were talking about him, right? Younger guy, tremendously skilled already. And great, but also opportunities for people to discover that talent within themselves and to discover that contribution that they can make to the work and the community. And I think that is a tremendous vital role that Pyramid plays, and that you guys are I want you to talk a little bit about that, because it's not just, we need somebody, so we're going to cast somebody. You guys are very intentional about the way you approach finding new artists and empowering people to discover the artist within themselves. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
I will say that that a lot of people, based off of their circumstances, have not explored their truest potentials. And sometimes it takes a person seeing something in you in order to, and mirroring that, like re-imaging that to you, in order for you to see it within yourself. And that's the empowerment piece that I think that we kind of set ourselves apart with, is literally empowering people to their greatness, which is what I consider to be a gift of mine, specifically when it comes to my casting and my looking for individuals with talent. I'm very skilled at doing that, and I didn't go to class to get that skill. It's a gift. It's the ability to see someone's light. And then I make it my business to make sure they see it too. And that's kind of how we go about that. But there are so many talented individuals within our community, so many actors that don't know that they're actors, so many storytellers that don't realize that that's because they've never had the outlet nor the opportunity. If you know how to sing, but you don't have a studio to go to, what are you supposed to do about that? If you know how to act, but you don't have a play to audition for, what are you supposed to do about that? It's having talent and not having a vehicle with which to utilize that talent makes you forget that it's talent at all. So what we do is we offer that opportunity by telling these stories now that give people a platform with which to discover their talent, you know. And so it's that they've always been there. Now they just have a place to go. Um, and now we have to convince them that it's time to get out and get there. So I literally I look at casting like GOTV efforts. I literally get out into my communities and talk with my people and tell them what we do and make sure they understand that it's so much more than just a show on the stage. It's so much more than a pretty polished, finished production. It is the process of getting to that production that can be life-changing for an individual and give it the opportunity to work in your life the way that it can. I will have to say with about 100% success rate at this point, everyone that's come through our doors that's first-time actors, they've been acting ever since. They haven't stopped. You look at like the dynamic Courageous Fire, first play she was ever in, Amen Corner, didn't even have a clue about acting, wasn't even thinking about it. I met her in the kitchen at my son's teacher's house for a Christmas gathering. And after having one conversation with her, I was like, have you ever acted? Have you ever done any acting? And so I encouraged her to come see us in the summer. She met Ken Matt, and that was all she wrote. Like she was, you couldn't tell me that woman didn't have an MFA as an actor, you know? But she'd never been on stage before, and after doing that one role, she won a Chloris Award that same summer. Like that's the type of acting she did. But she didn't even think about it before then. That's the type of stuff that I like to say is my gift, is to just round them up and get them in the door. And then once they get bit by theater, I mean, the gift of theater, once it gets a hold of you, it has its way of holding on to you its own self, you know. It's just getting you there. So that's what I do.
Well, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful gift, and it's a great thing to bring. What do you? So you're still looking to see at this stage, if I correct me if I'm mistaken, you're still going to try and keep on track with your season. Hopefully, that you'll be able to do June and August. That's the plan right now.
Yes, and if that changes, it will be announced very soon. If anything's going to change with that, we won't hold on probably much longer. But I'm an optimist, and they messed around and let me be the producing artistic director. So
I think it's safe to say I want. No idea what they were getting in for. I don't think they might.
Well, some of them might have had.
I think some of them are like, just buckle up, it's going to be a ride.
And it has been. And I'm sure everybody could attest to that. But in the spirit of optimism and what I hope theater evokes in people, I want to exemplify that with the way that we hold on and the way that we have faith and the way that we believe that things can turn around. We tell that story every summer. In theater, we offer some type of hope. We offer some type of clarity, some type of understanding, some type of rediscovery, and I'm not breaking from that mold for nothing. So we'll announce it in enough time to make sure that our patrons and our supporters know in ample time if they've made any purchases that they can rectify those things. We'll make sure everybody's well informed, but we love to hold on to hope around here. Keep hope alive.
That's something we all need. That's something we all need right about now. Tiffany,
truly,
I appreciate you. I appreciate what you bring to the community. I appreciate your passion and your spirit. I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for doing this, for this conversation, for a chance to just shoot the breeze and have a drink with you, even though we can't drink glasses.
And I would like to thank you, Matt McIver, for being a comrade, for being a supporter from the very beginning of Pyramid and a functioning member at one point, helping us along, showing us everything you knew that would help direct us and guide us and keep us well informed. And I look forward to what we can do in the community theater sector that can exemplify to our communities how working together can make us stronger and better. And I think we're in a unique position with what we do artistically to be kind of the pioneers of that movement. So I look forward to having succession of conversations with you and others in the theater sector, and what we can do with our vehicles to pull our communities back together.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. It's a space that allows for tremendous conversation and tremendous connection, and we're going to need lots of that. And we're going to need all the great creative folks that we can get our hands on. So I'm here for you. You know that Iowa Stage is here for you guys. We're always excited to collaborate and talk more and figure out how we can lift each other up. So thank you so much. This has been terrific, and we're going to do it again.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and finish my local Ruthie exile.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.